Hey there. Just gonna do some Palo Santo. I just did sage, and then my camera, like my recording stopped right after I did the sage. That was weird. But anyway, my plans got canceled for today. So I thought we would talk about, it's weird, I don't know if this is Palo Santo that I'm trying to burn here because it looks very weird. I'm gonna give up on it and get a fresh piece. Well, a fresh stub. I have all these stubs that I'm using this little stick to burn the stubs. So we're going to talk about the difference between sovereignty and selfishness. And why sovereignty is so important. I don't know, I caught onto this stream of energy the other day where it was like, perhaps there was like some spiritual advice back a while back, right, in our ancestry, where people were informed or, advised to be sovereign, which is, roughly translated to consider yourself, think of yourself. And what if that, morphed into just selfishness and narcissism? What if narcissism was born because of good intentions that just got lost a little bit? You know what I mean? What's that saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Also, one time earlier on in my journey, I would say at least 6 years ago, maybe more, I was in this space of doing magic and just remembering everything and loving life because of it. Because, magic is fun. And I had just discovered my ability to alchemize energy with the violet flame. And I know that we don't talk about that a lot on this channel, but I have talked about it before. So I was experimenting with it, right? And I was just meditating. I remember just laying on my bed, meditating, happy and blissful with this contentment about life, having just remembered my ability to alchemize energy, having much success with it, and excuse me, what came into my awareness was an energy that was a curse that a witch put on the heart of a man. And the curse that the witch put on the heart of the man froze his heart, so he became selfish. And then I was just shown the snowball of that energy and how, in turn, the women in his life also turned cold because they weren't being nurtured, right, and protected. And they had to step up, in ways that formerly their caring protector would have. And so this snowballed through out to what basically narcissism is today. Or was then, I should say, was then. And because this is back in the times where they would say that you can't heal narcissism. Now, I feel like when I just say that, people are going to think, oh, are you trying to say that you healed narcissism? And it's like, well, that is why I'm here. So, but what I did was I alchemized that energy, right? I alchemized it right when I saw it. And I thought nothing of it, I was just like, oh, a curse on the heart of a man, alchemize that. I was just alchemizing everything that came into my awareness, and that came into my awareness. So, nowadays we know that narcissism is on a scale, that even, I still had narcissistic tendencies in me. Not when I was doing all my magic and those higher frequencies and stuff, but when I had to come back down to earth and deal with people, in relationships, all my relationship skills were narcissistic. But I was alone back in this era of doing my magic. So, I wasn't fully aware of my own part in it yet. Anyway, I don't know why I'm trying to downplay that I cleared a curse with alchemy through using the violet flame. I guess because I just don't want people to think that I'm trying to own the fact that narcissism is now being healed on earth, because I do think it's definitely a group effort, but we all have to take care of our own, and I alone cannot accomplish this. So anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this up though is because I was just telling this other story about maybe selfishness being something of a byproduct of people trying to be sovereign. But anyway, the next morning after I did that, cleared that curse, I woke up to a white ermine in my altar. So I had built an altar in my bedroom, and I did it that day, the day that I did the clearing of the curse. I'd built an altar, and I was clearing energy. So it was like, it was my very first altar. And I had built it, and then the morning after I built it, and the morning after I cleared this curse, the white ermine was in my altar, like in my bedroom, where I was sleeping. There was no way for this thing to get in my house. That was apparent to me. It literally disappeared afterwards. It went under my bureau. There was no way for it to escape after that. I don't know. It just left. Like, everything was taken apart. It was nowhere to be found. But anyway, it was there. And so I was in the habit of looking up the spirit totem messages, because everything, all the symbolisms that we have in our experience give us, messages. They have meaning. There's no coincidences here. So I was like, oh, well, maybe, this is a message, because obviously it's weird. It's very weird to wake up to a white ermine in my bedroom. It's a weasel, right? In case you don't know. And these weasels turn white in the winter. Okay, so this was in the winter months. And so I look it up. I Google the white ermine, right? And the first listing that came up at that time on Google said it was a bad omen to see a white ermine first thing in the morning. Literally that, it said that. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. It didn't feel bad. I didn't feel threatened. I wasn't scared. It was literally just like popped up on its hind legs looking at me. It looked me in the eyes and everything. And it was like matter of feet from me. Like, from my bed, it was less than 2 feet. But from where I was laying in my bed, maybe like, 3 to 5 feet. It was maybe like 3 feet from my feet, So, the next listing on Google said, talked about a witch that was turned into a white weasel. And I was like, oh, damn. At first I didn't think anything of it, but it dawned on me a little bit later. Oh, damn. I cleared a curse of a witch. And this is saying a witch can turn into a white weasel. And here it is in my altar the next morning after I clear a curse done by a witch. And I was like, oh, damn. And I was a little bit like, like, should I be much more careful than I'm being, And I'm highly, I was being allowed to experiment at the time. I was being allowed to experiment. So let me just see if I can. I know my microphone has been kind of checking out and stuff, so I want to mess with the settings for a second. Hold on here. I guess that's the pattern it's supposed to have. Yeah, so I don't want to have to yell too, so I'm just gonna like pull it closer. Yeah. Hopefully this is okay. So I didn't feel like threatened or anything. It was just like reading this information. It was just like knowledge information, you know? And it was like pretty synchronistic to the fact that I had just dabbled in that. And so I was kind of wondering if if everything was okay. But everything was okay. Like, and everything's still okay. And I think what it was is that, it wasn't a bad omen. And if it was a bad omen, I had already alchemized it. That was just a side story, like a like a weird thing that happened to me when I was playing with magic. All right, sovereignty. Okay, I feel like that sounds really, really crazy. All right, I'm gonna start the story over. You know what? I'm not gonna start it over. You know why? I know that a lot of the stuff that I talk about sounds crazy, right? And I know that for the average person living their life, going to work, coming home, paying their bills, the information that I'm talking about when I talk about something like magic or crazy story about a white ermine and a witch, that they could just kind of dismiss me as crazy or weird or whatever, right? And and it's understandable to me, right? But like that is why I often and usually offer the information that I have about alchemy in a very practical way. That is specifically why I don't just say, hey, you can alchemize with violet flame energy, which you can. You don't have to do the whole thing that I have taught you to do through the process, but that process makes sense to your mind because you're untangling energy and you're going through some steps which quell your ego, which unlock any emotion that hasn't been processed yet, which literally will neutralize the energy. And I do it and I teach that method because even for the most practical person that goes to work every day and pays their bills, and lives a very like logical 3D life without magic, that can make sense. That can work. All they have to do is try it. And they'll know. If they've had a habit that they couldn't break for a long time, if they'd had an anxiety or a depression or whatever, and they do that process, they will know. They will know, that it stands on its own 2 feet there. Now, is it like very easy for me to do that process because I can move energy and because I'm naturally moving energy when I do it? Yeah. It might take longer for a person who's not familiar with their ability to do so. It might. But if they do that process, they will get relief. They will be able to move through the energy and they will change their life, and it's so practical that like that's important for a lot of people to have, right? So I guess because I've done all that work to be very practical, and that was one of my goals early on when I was getting downloads and information and learning about magic and all that. Trust me, I wanted people to know. But I could see when I tried to share with them that if it wasn't practical, they were not going to listen. And I realized, okay, I need this to be more practical. And when I came to some practical ways, that's when I started sharing in a very practical way. So you will see that on my channel that I really honed in on the practical method that this most recent type of alchemy is. Excuse me, but it doesn't mean that all that other stuff doesn't exist for me. And I do understand that if I talk about that other stuff, the magic and the weird coincidences, synchronicities, and strangeness, like the spiritual relationships and things like that, I realize that when I talk about stuff like that, or the instant healings that I assisted and things like that, I realize that people will start to go, oh, I don't know, this girl might be crazy, you know? So in one way, it's like, oh, that would be a shame for people to write it off because they would want to dismiss me as crazy and not actually experiment with it for themselves, you know? So I feel like it's a risk and I don't want to undo everything, I've done. But then again, like, this feels natural to me. It feels like, you know what? Most of the information that I've laid down on this channel over the years is for the future. It's for when people actually are ready to do their work. There's a guide there for them to do it. And, the majority of people may not be able to process what I've shared or even like let it into their awareness, right? Because when we live in lack mindset, we are living oftentimes in a state of victims and rescuers. So if we think there's a victim and there's a rescuer, we can either name ourselves the rescuer, which means that we are the ones that are going to do the saving and we are going to get credit for it, therefore, at least in our own minds. And maybe recognized by outside forces, you never know. Or if we're a victim, we're not going to look for solutions. We're just going to call ourselves like incapable or unable or shit out of luck. So in those kind of energies, the information that I'm presenting, it's not a match to that, As practical as it is, it's not a match to... It's not going to be brought into the awareness necessarily of someone who's not actively looking for solutions. But eventually there's going to come a time where people will actively look for solutions. And so I believe in the future is when the information that I've offered on my channel will be put to use by others. And it served a side purpose for me, which is nice when things do that, for actively working through some of my stuff, right? You've seen that as I talk about stuff out loud, like I'll be channeling a download or something, and then I'll notice that there's like a note in there that hit on something within me that I need healing. And it's happened so many times, and I haven't always shared with the channel the healing that I did afterwards, but sometimes I have. And I think, showing an active example of the healing process within myself and how I did it and where I utilized it and has been helpful to me, of course, but will be helpful to the channel in the future when people choose to watch it. But also, like, I wouldn't have seen all those things if I wasn't just talking about all this stuff and downloading all these things and sharing the information. And, some people will just always think it's crazy, and that's okay too. Like, but this is information that is timeless, like for the time that you're on Earth in this incarnation and the time that YouTube will host this information, it's going to be valid. Like, you can do the method. I have not always had the biggest awareness, right? If you go to the earlier days on my channel, sometimes it's me like trying to figure stuff out or like working through something or working with a bias that I hadn't cleared yet, But I think that's okay too, because in the future, maybe there's going to be someone with that bias too, and they'll gravitate towards that message, and at least it'll be a step on the rung of the ladder of clearing. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we can't just clear to the root. So even my own biases could be beneficial to someone, even if it's not that they have the bias too. It could be that they see their own progress in comparison to me, right? They say, oh, my awareness is bigger than this. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know why I felt like talking about all that, but that's where I'm at with it. Like, I know it sounds a bit crazy. It's all right, though. This information is not put here to make me famous or whatever. It's mostly been to, well, at first it was probably put there as a way to self-express. It was put there as a way to create a space where I could be myself, where I could show who I am. And it's a healing space, and even though I would have thought that it was just a space where I would assist others to find out how they can heal themselves, it's also been a space where I could heal myself. And it's been something to do with all these downloads and information. It's a way to document it and document like the steps and the progress that I made over the time, because I would probably forget a lot of it. You'll see in different videos, sometimes the language that I'm using is different at different periods of time. And sometimes that's just influenced from other people who I've gotten information from or heard talk about something, or the download that I got. You know, sometimes the download would have been from a different, like, energy. And that energy expresses in that way. You know what I mean? So, yeah. You know, sometimes I watch my old videos. I don't know if you noticed, but before this went to the screensaver, I had my channel on behind me. And sometimes I'll go, like, to my older videos, you know, different lengths of time at different times. I'll just intuitively go and listen to the video, and it'll be like, oh, wow, this is relevant for me now. Cool. So not only is it a resource for others perhaps in the future, but it's a resource for me now, my own channelings, my own teachings. Because a lot of the information, when I say it's timeless, it means that, like, I can go back to that same information at a different time, and it'll get me at a different spot on the energy stream. So it's still relevant, you know? Or I may find that I'm in the same loop as I was, or I may see something that I didn't see about my own self back then. All right. What, I'm sorry about that crinkling. I know my microphone is kind of pulled up in front of me, so when I put this thing down, it might have sounded loud. I'm just asking the oracle, what in regards to the difference between sovereignty and selfishness should we discuss? Apply effort, justification, change of plans, and trusting. Ah, yes. All right. Apply effort. Interesting. All right, so apply effort came out first. You know, one of the things that I knew about my path, because I got downloaded with it earlier on, was that I would be taking a path of no shortcuts. And so if we look at things in terms of shortcuts and not shortcuts, what is a shortcut? Well, a shortcut is when you kind of bypass something or try to get something done quicker without applying effort, right? You're trying to forego some of the effort. So, excuse me, sovereignty actually will require effort. Sovereignty will require effort. Why? Because when you are sovereign, You are looking to fill your own cup. You are doing the thing that you need done for yourself before you outsource. With narcissism or selfishness, you are most often looking outside of yourself for whatever you need. It's going to be someone else that's going to be doing it, whether it be making you feel important or special or justified. All of that stuff comes from outside of you when you're being selfish. But where you're sovereign, you are taking responsibility for the needs of yours that you can fill yourself. And that takes effort, right? Like, oh, if I have a need and I need it filled, it would be like, okay, so I have, a vehicle right outside my house. It's in perfect working condition. I have gasoline. I have money. I know the way to the store, right? So if I have something that I need, I could just drive to the store myself and get it, right? Sovereignty. Whereas narcissism, selfishness, would be like, hey, son or mom, or hi, friend that I haven't talked to in a while. Hey, I really need some milk. I just don't feel like going out. Could you drop some milk off? I don't drink milk. Could you drop some milk off to my house? And of course, the person who's coping in narcissism knows who to call that will do the deed. Because they already have a group of people who have weak boundaries and who don't know how to say no and who are people pleasers. And who, are relating in transactional manner, meaning, oh, I should probably do this for them because I might need something next week. So there's a difference, right? And I'm using a silly example, but apply that to anything. Whether it's my mood is low, am I going to outsource that? Am I going to try to get somebody else to tell me how great I am? Or am I going to look in the mirror and tell myself that I'm pretty good, I'm fine, I'm doing all right, I've done it up to this, point. So how would a shortcut come into play here? Let's see. In terms of like spiritual advancement, I guess you could say, a spiritual journey, a shortcut would be that I'm trying to think of a good example. Hold on. A shortcut would be that I identify a wound in myself, right? And I go, oh, every time someone brings up my weight, of course, that would only be my mother. No, my mother doesn't do that. I've seen her do it to others. But anyway, maybe she's learned because I don't think she's like that anymore. Anyways, every time someone brings up my weight, I verbally attack them, right? I get triggered. And I've lost all my friends because I keep getting triggered by the same thing, and now I've yelled at everybody. Okay, so if I were to handle that situation, first of all, I would fill up my own cup. I would figure out why I'm getting triggered, right? I would acknowledge that I'm getting triggered, validate why I'm getting triggered, accept that I'm getting triggered, be present with the feelings that are flooding me when I'm triggered. Then if I wanted to be in relationship with those people again, I would have to do some repair work. I would have to call them. I would have to express to them that I had regrets about the way that I behaved and that I actually changed my behavior, and I know that I won't be bothered by this anymore because I've done what I needed to do to deal with my uncomfortable feelings, right? That would be the appropriate thing that would take effort, that would be done by a sovereign being, and that would not be a shortcut because you did all the steps, you did the work that needed to be done. What would a shortcut be in that situation? I got triggered by everybody. Now I've yelled at them all. Now I don't have any friends left. I'm just gonna move to a different group of people. I'm just gonna move to a different group of people and just like get a, find, and like no matter what they say, I'm not gonna get upset. So that is how I'm gonna handle it. Now this is a shortcut. It probably won't get you very far, but it's a shortcut because you haven't done any of the work to take care of the actual issue. You've run away from it, basically. So that's what a shortcut looks like. It looks like short-term handling of the situation. In the long term, that's not going to yield very good results because chances are if you have a trigger, you're going to get triggered again. It's going to come out again. You can't adapt some triggers. Sometimes you can adapt. If it's a trigger, you can't really adapt it. Sometimes, but for the most part, it's going to come out again. So, and besides, even if you did adapt and you never got reactive to people in the new group that you were in, you would still be living with that energy. So you'd always attract people that were probably talking about you behind your back instead of to your face or something, It would get louder and louder and louder because you will live out the energy that you have in you. And if you have in you something that you're trying to avoid, there will be consequences to that. So a shortcut tries to avoid doing the work. So in a spiritual sense, it's like we can call it bypassing. You might have heard that term, spiritual bypassing. Okay. Next we have change of plans. Sovereignty versus selfish. When we are sovereign and the plans change, our sovereignty means that we are taking responsibility for ourselves, how we feel, and how we respond to any situation, including a change of plans. So if there is a change of plans, we take responsibility for how that affects us and how we feel about that. We are actually present with any feelings that come up. We actually probably won't even be that upset about a change of plans because myself, I can understand both of these things, and here's why. When I started out, I was in narcissistic coping mechanisms, and change of plans would trigger me. The reason it would trigger me is because I used control to keep myself feeling safe. So I would want to control my environment and what was going on and what I was subjected to. If I was going to have to do something, I would have to psych myself up and really put on an armor and make sure that I was going to be able to feel safe and in control, Control tactics were highly used to help me manage my triggers. So meaning I wouldn't put myself in a situation where I thought I might be triggered. So if I had a change of plans, that would automatically trigger me because now I couldn't use my coping mechanism of controlling the environment. So it was a real issue. And it was because I was being selfish. I wasn't thinking about the fact that, maybe the change of plans were really important for the other person, or maybe the new plans were actually much better for everybody. I was only thinking about what I needed to do to feel safe. And then my response to that, meaning a trigger, meaning being really upset and anxious and stuff, would affect other people, not just myself. So it's very selfish way of living. It's acting as if I'm the only one that matters in the situation. And even if it didn't insinuate that I was the only one that matters, like even if I did have the capacity to respect or honor that the other person might be upset by the change of plans too, I probably wouldn't in selfishness, because I would be too consumed by the overwhelming feelings that I was not able to be present with, but that were looming over me, right? Causing the trigger, causing the heightened irritability and the anxiousness. That's that emotion that it wants to be seen, but that I'm not willing to be present with. Whereas now being in sovereignty, because I am most often not attached to the outcome, meaning I have plans, like today I had plans, they got changed, no trigger, no issue, understanding. That's what I had. And that was because I was not attached to the outcome. And I assume now, if I have changed plans, that there is a purpose that is serving me. That's what I assume. And you know what? To be honest, I did kind of feel like, oh, cool. I can kind of stay at home today, put around, do some more cleaning. I would actually like that, because I did do some cleaning yesterday, but there was a few more things that I wanted to do. And it'll be nice to have that done, I was able to spend a bunch of time researching the best extra virgin olive oil, and then researching and comparing what water pump I wanted to get for my 5-gallon water container thing. And I don't know, just a bunch of little things, right? Like, I was like, yeah, this is great that my plans got changed. I'm sovereign, right? I'm the one tending to myself, and I'm automatically thinking in a growth mindset, meaning like this is happening for me. So much different from when I was in selfish mode. All right. I guess what we're being shown now through this talk is like basically just some key factors and things that you might notice as differences in the ways of relating. That, like, if you know that someone you know or yourself is reacting in one of these kind of ways, now it's going to be on like a scale. Like, you may not do the thing I was doing, but like you may notice that there's something in there for you, just to bring awareness where you can become more sovereign. All right, so then we've got justification. And a sovereign being is operating under the truth. And when I say the truth, there are subjective truths, and then there's like the truth. And the truth, I would say, is like what the laws of the universe are. It's like we're in this universe. I know that there may be such thing as a multiverse. So, but for the purposes of this, let's just say universe, right? And universe as in, like, it's the all. And there are laws that run this universe. And if, as a sovereign being, excuse me, we are operating through our heart space, through our curiosity, our inner urge, and our intuition. Those are the things that run us. Right? Because we're not trying to conform to somebody else's expectations. We're not being attached to the outcome. We know God has his divine will that we are willing to act out and through. So there's no part of us that speaks and then has to like justify. If you've ever seen me justify, that was my ego. Right? Like when I was talking about, I know that this might sound crazy and stuff. That is not divine truth. Worrying that youth might think it's crazy. That's Julie. That's Julie's ego that is here to protect her. Kind of saying like, hey, I get that you might think this is crazy, but like, I have orchestrated this purposefully. I'm justifying something there, right? The truth is just the truth, and it needs no justification. So mostly, hopefully, I'm speaking truths and they need no justification. I'm doing that from my sovereignty. Once I am trying to justify something, anything you do that you're trying to justify, it is out of selfishness. It is when we're dealing in those narcissistic ways. It's our ego. The ego is selfish. The ego is meant to be selfish, right? I'm not saying it's wrong or bad for the ego to be selfish because it is meant to be. But it's good to know when we're acting in our ego or if we're acting with divine truth. And sovereignty is the divine truth. So if you're here to do God's will, as probably the people who find their way to this channel, many of them are. Actually, I think many of the people who may be resonating with this channel now are doing divine will. Maybe in the future, it would just be a more general audience. I'm guessing. Then you probably already know, right? You probably already know the difference between the truth and your ego, or the truth and my ego, right? You can see that. So anytime that I'm trying to justify something, it's going to be my ego and it's going to be a narcissism, a selfishness. The ego is meant to be selfish. It is there to protect me, right? But it's good to be aware of that, right? Because I don't want to be, for instance, cancel culture is an example of this, where cancel culture would go into great depths to explain why one thing is wrong. And they're justifying their cancellation of it. And they have to go through elaborate stories and make themselves victims in order to tell you the story of why it's justified. So you see, that's selfish. Because they're not the only ones here on earth. It is serving a divine purpose. They can choose to exclude it from their experience, to not agree to participate in it anymore. But that doesn't mean that every other being on earth is also done with it. Maybe there's something else that is being learned by another being on earth, right? Like, sovereignty says that I tend to me. That unless you're asking me for help, I'm assuming you're doing what you're meant to be doing. Now, in the case of caring for children, it's our jobs to keep them safe. I mean, even if it's not your kid. I kind of think that, like, if you see a kid and they're in danger, then it's not your kid, and you think, oh, well, that parent isn't paying attention, but this kid's running in the road. I mean, yes, I think that is your job. It's my job to protect children. Protecting children. It's everyone's job, whether they're your child or not. So the child doesn't have to ask you for help specifically, nor does the parent if they're in direct danger. Other than that, we kind of have to be hands-off sometimes, right? And I only mean when their lives are in danger. Because sometimes there are choices that parents make that we don't agree with, but that are in their path and that we cannot interfere with. For instance, I had an experience recently, I don't know, a month ago or so, where I was in Walmart and there was this very young couple with a baby. And the baby dropped its pacifier on the floor in Walmart. And the young girl, I don't know if she was the mother, there was a gentleman, a young man carrying the baby. I don't know if the girl was the mother or not. But she picked up the pacifier and she wiped it on her pants real quick. And then she goes to stick it in the baby's mouth, and I was like, oh, do you need a wipe for that? I couldn't stop myself. It was not my place. Absolutely was not my place. And I am not supposed to interject, right? I already know that, right? I'm supposed to wait for an invitation. I have to be recognized as helpful in order to be helpful to somebody. So it was already in the energy that I was going to be rejected, right? But I still did it. I still wanted to do it because I wanted that girl to think twice about putting a dirty pacifier from the floor of Walmart where so many people's shoes have tracked whatevers, and who knows what they mop the floor with, how dirty that water gets, and how much they, I guess they don't mop it, probably buffers or whatever. You know what I mean, though? That those shoes, people's shoes walk in public restrooms and then all over the store and stuff. So I just felt like, gosh, please think twice about putting that pacifier right back in your kid's mouth from the floor of Walmart. I mean, I know she wiped it on her pants, but like, where have those been? What has she, I don't know. That was my deal. That was my ego. I'm even justifying telling you. Do you see the difference? And it's not my business, and it wasn't gonna kill that baby, right? Like, that baby's probably not gonna die. Very likely not going to be detrimentally affected by the pacifier from the floor. Wiped off the pants, But yeah. So that was my narcissism. That was my selfishness, trying to interject my beliefs and my way of operating onto a perfect stranger who was allowed to give birth to a baby. Potentially. But yeah. Okay. The last one we got is trusting. All right, trusting. I think that selfishness, the narcissism, has a real hard time trusting. It's difficult to trust. That's why we use control tactics. People have not been upfront, honest. They've been selfish to us. That's how we learned to be selfish. That's how we learned selfishness was even like a thing to do, because we learned it from outside of ourselves, right? So selfishness definitely has a hard time trusting. Now, does this mean that like we should be able to trust other people? No, it means that we should be discerning about who we can and cannot trust with whatever task or information or whatnot, right? It's like being able to trust someone else requires us to also trust ourselves. And in narcissism, we don't trust ourselves because we have not proved to ourselves that we can take care of ourselves or that we can take responsibility for ourselves, because we always put it up to somebody else to serve us, to reassure us, to get on board with what we say, or to prove to us that they love us, or, to stroke our ego, or to make us feel more powerful when we can control them, or whatever. Like, all those things indicate that we don't trust ourselves because we are putting responsibility on other people to take care of and do things for us that we could be doing ourselves. Now, if we don't trust ourselves, it's pretty impossible to trust someone else. It's going to be a reflection of ourselves, where if we don't trust ourselves, we're probably going to attract a lot of people that don't trust themselves either. And a lot of people who don't trust themselves, there's a reason for it. They know that they'll take the low road. They know that they're weak. They know that they don't have a lot of willpower. They know that they will do the backhanded thing, or take vengeance, or take the easy road, the shortcut. They know that they're weak to some of the 7 deadly sins, right? So they know they're not trustworthy. That means they're going to attract people who are not trustworthy. So it's all kind of a thing where, like, you got to be able to trust yourself. Now, one of the ways that I earned my own trust back was to start showing up for myself, to start showing myself over many years That I was going to be the one to tend to my own emotions. I was going to be the one to be present with it. I was going to be the one to accept it in myself. I was going to be the one to caretake myself. And after a while of doing that, my kind of self and my ego kind of relaxed into me and just said, okay, I see that you really mean it. It's been a long time and you haven't let me down. So I guess, yeah, we could trust you. And then I can trust myself. And then it's like, okay, now I can start to trust other people because I can trust myself to discern. I know that I'm trustworthy and I know that I have my own best interest in mind. And since I have my own best interest in mind, I will be discerning about who I trust. Sovereignty says I will be discerning about who I trust. That I am worthy of my own trust. And that therefore I can be discerning about who I am able to trust outside of myself. All right. I mean, we could probably go on and on with topics that could be discussed in both of these spheres of selfishness or sovereignty. But the benefit of sovereignty is that we can line up with our soul's intention, with God's will for us, with what we're meant to do here, with our freedom. I mean, freedom. Sometimes what we're meant to do here is just be free. That's it. You know, it's not dictated. It's not written like you must do this. No, it's get yourself free so you can do what the fuck you want. And you're trustworthy. God trusts you. When you trust yourself, God trusts you too. And then you're trusted to do what you want with your own free will. Well, you've always been trusted to do what you want with your own free will, but I mean, your creation will stick when it's built on the foundations that you've built when you are in sovereignty. If you build on selfish foundations, they will eventually crumble because it's not built on the truth. If there's a lie in the building of the foundation or the structure, eventually it's going to crumble because truth will prevail eventually. A lie will always come to light eventually. It might take a while. You might be able to build your tower really, really high so that when it does fall, it's going to cause a lot of ruckus. But that's the thing. It's like some of those big things that we've put a lot of investment in that weren't built on truth, when they cause a big ruckus by falling, it gets a lot of attention. So a lot of people can learn by the example of it. So sometimes you're allowed to do that because then you can be the example of what not to do. We need those too. I've been the example of what not to do sometimes. Maybe we all take turns with it. I don't know. Yeah. I kind of want to throw this last one in just because this one's been weighing on me a little bit. And I think we've kind of already covered it in another video. But like, just like this holding grudges and being vengeful against people who are in selfish ways, that's also selfish. And on this earth, have you ever noticed, like even me, right? Even I do this, but like anytime you can't call something out without being that thing. Like in the moment, you know what I mean? Like, so like by saying someone is awful and, you know, terrible and they should be punished, you're literally writing a spell against them that could cause them harm, which means you're kind of doing the thing that you just said they were, you know? And we're punished by the consequences. We're punished by what we do. We're punished by being that thing. You know, that is the punishment because you are the vibration of it, and that means you will live it. So if you're vengeful, if you're a punisher, guess what you're going to live out? The match to that energetically. Either always having reasons to be judgmental and punishing of others, which doesn't sound like a very fun existence, because if you're using all your time to have to punish everybody else, when are you going to create from your own intuition and your own divine will in your heart? When is your heart going to get to express? Because let me tell you, your heart is not the one who wants to punish everyone. That's your selfishness. That is the part of you that is scared. Now, fears are not always rational. So, you got to be gentle with yourself. This fear was born somehow, some way. It's okay that it's there. Part of discovering it in yourself is this beautiful process of getting to know yourself. So we get to know ourselves through the contrast. But anytime that we go into that mode of like, oh, this is bad, this needs to be punished, this person should pay, God's gonna pay them back, or, no, God does not pay them back. That's not what God does. Their own energy is what they live out. That's what it ever is. That's all it ever is. They're only ever going to live out their own energy. God doesn't take vengeance on people. God doesn't punish people. I know that there's I've never read the Bible, but I know that there's a part of the Bible, because I've heard it said by somebody and it got my attention, but I know there's a part of the Bible where it talks about how Jesus, which is not God, which is maybe a disciple, is that the right word, of God, right? When Jesus turns against the people outside the temple, and he turns their tables all up on end or something, maybe he's angry with them for being, I don't know, greedy or something, right? There's something that he's frustrated with, and he ends up kind of acting in this chaotic way. And, what I would say about that is Jesus was embodying an energy of divine consciousness, right? But Jesus was also in a human form at that time. And we humans have these biases and we get energy stuck in us, and that man, who we call Jesus, would also have been subjected to that. So him acting in that way doesn't mean that we are in our divine highest light when we act that way too. Like punishing people or putting people in their place or what, It's not a reason to justify behaviors like that. That would be our selfishness. That would be our ego, right? But Jesus also was a human being, so it's very possible that he was just acting out of frustration. I mean, he was up against a lot. It was very difficult for him to bring that energy here at that time amongst so much density. It was a brave thing for him to do, but he's also not perfect, So, all right, yeah, I don't know how I started with that. Oh, I was just talking about grudges and trying to punish people, and I was brought around to that, to just in case there was anyone who was thinking of that and thinking that it was justified to be in that punishing or vengeful space with regard to other people. Because it's all love, okay? Love is actually what everything is. So anytime you're separated from love, you're doing the selfish thing. It's that simple, really. But we are humans, like I say. We are learning, we're living. It's understandable that some of us have gotten stuck into some programming that's kind of lower density, that kind of sucks, that veils our view. We forget. Our hearts get closed because we're scared. And that's when we get into all this ways of coping that are selfish and narcissistic. So becoming aware of the other thing and what the other thing looks like and feels like and acts like is helpful, because when we make the decision, we can know what it is that what is possible for us. What would set us free? What does freedom look like? We can know that freedom is possible, and it is possible. Yes, freedom is possible. And it's well worth the effort, you know? When I was shaking my head there, the word glorious, and I didn't say it because I was just like, you know what, I didn't say it because I was like, they're just gonna think I'm, just like preaching or whatever, but it is glorious to know freedom. It is glorious to know the freedom of your heart space. And our minds can get really tangled up with misunderstandings, and our fears further exacerbate that. Our fears are always clouding our view, and if we're taking in our view to process information in our minds, then the information that we're processing in our minds, it gets distorted. And then we have the added thing of sugars and impure foods that are highly processed, that further cloud the actual biology of our brain, which can affect our mind and how clearly we think or not. And this is something that we all have to choose to take responsibility for when we are ready. It is important, The reason why I was looking up extra virgin olive oil is because I came across an infomercial on YouTube, and it was a doctor, maybe you've seen it, kind of annoying. I never really watched it all the way through before. But he sells extra virgin olive oil from Morocco because he's shown in the research that it actually has a very high amount of polyphenols, which can cross the blood-brain barrier, I guess, and clean out a lot of free radicals and stuff, and also melt your fat cells, and so on and so forth. And it's just this particular region in Morocco growing these olives that have to use these polyphenols to survive. And so that's why they have this very high amount of polyphenols. Whereas you'd have to drink a lot of extra virgin olive oil to get the same effect. This particular olive oil from Morocco, you only need a small amount to get the same effect. And it just kind of resonated in a place where I was like, I use extra virgin olive oil anyway, but I usually get organic, but I get it from Walmart because actually there's not a lot of organic extra virgin olive oils for sale around here at a reasonable price. And I'm usually pretty budget, on point with my budget, I make a little go a long way. And the olive oil that I use, it's fine. I don't see any issue with it. I don't think Walmart's scamming me or anything like what it is. But I was like, I think it is worth trying this other higher quality olive oil and just seeing, why not? And I look at it like medicine. I don't take any prescriptions. I don't go to any doctors. I don't do drugs or alcohol. I have a Spotify subscription, and that's and an Amazon Prime, but that's pretty much my only monthly stuff, So I thought, if I just want to buy this olive oil every month and treat it like it's medicine, why not try it? So I decided I'm going to try it. It's a lot more expensive than the olive oil I get from Walmart, obviously, but we'll give it a try. It's like $6 more, $7 more than I spend at Walmart for half the amount. Not too terrible, We'll try it out. I'll let you know. I've been eating the with the Kapha Ayurvedic Kapha dosha in mind. I don't know if I've noticed that my energy levels are better, but also I've been walking and things like that, so that probably helped my energy levels anyway. Yeah, I feel good. Feel pretty good. I was thinking about buying some walking sticks. I've never had walking sticks before, and I'm thinking like, am I just like looking for reasons to shop? Because like, can I use an actual stick? But like they have these poles for walking. Now that I'm like I'm heavier than I normally am when I go hiking, so I thought, oh, this might make me more confident in going. So I don't know if I'll invest in those. Let me know if you use any hiking poles and how they work for you. If you feel like they really improve your experience or not. But they're really lightweight and they're retractable. So I feel like it'd be easy enough to like it wouldn't add to the clutter in my home. I can store those like near my paddle boards on the shelves in my mudroom and things like that. I repotted some plants. I have this spider plant and it has two of these I've repotted. What's that sticker say? It's just a sticker. I actually bought this plant from a thrift shop. And just somebody like planted them and donated them, which I thought was pretty cool. Like she has a mother plant, and she just donated to the thrift shop so they could make some money off of them. That was a while back. I've had that one for a while. I have various plants, so I used to not be able to keep plants alive at all. This plant is my oldest plant, right here. This is a Thanksgiving cactus. You know what? She didn't bloom this past year. That's unfortunate, but she's about 7 years old. And I haven't repotted her in a while, so she might need that. And this actually would hold a bigger pot, so I might do that. But I didn't have a green thumb for whatever reason. 7 years ago, I had killed a lot of plants before I got this one. And I was like frustrated with it. And I was like, I really wanted to keep my plants. And then like I kept killing them. And then for some reason, this one's really stays with me. So even in the beginning when I was killing other plants, this one stayed alive. And you know what I did to get my green thumb? Everybody who I knew had a green thumb, I would ask them to rub my thumb with their thumb and give me some of their green thumb. And I did that for like a couple months, and then ever since then I can grow plants. And they grow very well, and sometimes I'll get like the reduced plants from the grocery stores or Walmart has them sometimes, and like nurse them back to health and stuff. Yeah, so now I really love plants, and I'm totally good at growing them and repotting them and proliferating. Is that a word? Yeah, I got like a bunch of succulents in my kitchen window and stuff that I've been able to keep going for quite some time. And so I enjoy that. And I don't know if that's like a little bit of magic or just me like being empaths to their vibration, because that's all I did was like remind myself that I could have the vibration of being a good plant caretaker. And now I haven't killed any plants since. I've had like the seasonal plant, go. A basil plant, I don't know if those are supposed to stay alive forever. So if they are, then I can't say that I haven't killed a plant. I like getting potted basil. and cooking with fresh basil. Yum, yum. Oh yeah, I was going to look into, does basil come dried? And would it be even as good? I don't know. But I was thinking having dried basil might be good to have on hand. Right, my phone is gonna die. I gotta go plug it in. I've got a text from one of my sons, and I'm gonna call him back. So I guess we'll go with that. Alright, this is a weird one. Do we call it something? Is it an alchemy reading? No, it's just a talk. See you next time I feel like talking. Talk to me if you want.